Welcome to our final class in the first chapter for our Law 201 course. Today's topic is going to be the Brady Rule. This does not necessarily have to do anything with witness prep, witness examination directly. We're more or less transitioning to our second topic, that is reading the Constitution and interpreting it. The Brady Rule, as we know it today, arose under a criminal case in Maryland, where essentially two gentlemen, Mr. Brady and Mr. Boblets, murder a coworker. They murder their coworker, and both culprits are found guilty of that, and they're sentenced to death. So this is a matter between life and death for the both of them. But wait, on appeal, it turns out that only one of the culprits actually murdered the coworker. The other one, yeah, he might have been involved. He was involved for sure, but he wasn't directly involved in the killing. He simply supplied the other culprit with a car. So yeah, he aided him in stealing a car, but he did not commit the murder himself. And that raises a question into due process, whether all necessary steps to ensure a fair trial were taken by the government, because the prosecution simply withheld that statement from one of the culprits, so it did not show it. Before long, the case lands right before the US Supreme Court. The court held that a conviction that was obtained by withholding exculpatory evidence from the jury does violate the 14th Amendment's due process clause. Now, exculpatory evidence is a fancy word for favorable evidence to the defense. So, anything that could weaken the prosecution's case, essentially. Now, this isn't anything new, though. What the Supreme Court did there was they simply read the amendment as it was written in the Constitution and gave it new context by applying it to this recent case, or well, for that time, recent. That's something the Supreme Court does all the time, even in today's cases. They read past articles of the Constitution and give the law new meaning based on their interpretation of these articles. The rule today more or less states that the prosecution must disclose evidence that is favorable to the defense. Now, if they do not, so evidence that is in their possession that is not disclosed, if that is not disclosed, well, then it is unconstitutional. So the trial is unconstitutional, and that's grounds for mistrial. The whole trial process would turn out to be invalid, faulty, and would have to be repeated. So any conviction obtained based on, well, undisclosed evidence that violates the Brady Rule is an invalid one. That also means that Brady rules are typically only discovered after the conviction, because, well, the main reason why Brady rules are discovered to begin with is because of a, hey, wait a minute, but wasn't it like so and so? So when this hidden evidence suddenly resurfaces, which most often happens after a conviction. Now, when determining a Brady violation, the defense, because it's most often the defense that points out a Brady violation, they must show that the evidence suppressed was both relevant to the case and that the trial's outcome would have been affected by this piece of evidence had it been introduced. Let's actually apply this test to a scenario that I wrote based on past bar exams, past Florida bar exams. Let's say we're defending our client in a prosecution for arson. Arson under 18 US Code Section 81. So basically, arson means to intentionally, so with ill intent, with malice, essentially, uh, to set a fire to any building, infrastructure, or anything under that category thereof. So whether it's just a railway, an office building, a shop, whatever, yeah, that's arson if you do it intentionally. Now, at the trial, the prosecutor proves our client to be the culprit by presenting a clip showing our client running out of the shop that was set on fire shortly after. The only other person present, the shop owner, identified our client as the culprit. However, what the government did not disclose was a police report that indicated, okay, the shop owner was heavily intoxicated at that time. So shortly after the incident, there was this test conducted, and it revealed, yup, shop owner was intoxicated. And we have to comment on whether the prosecutor's failure to disclose this evidence is enough for a Brady violation. So a disclosure violation under Brady v. Maryland. Comment in this case just means to back up our opinion with arguments. So not simply state an opinion, yep, it is like so, but also kind of back it up. So let's do so. A few key takeaways right away. Yes, it can be shown that our client was at the crime scene because the clip, a recording of, say, a security camera, whatever the clip was, shows that our client was at the crime scene shortly before, well, the crime. However, that's not enough to satisfy the burden of proof of beyond reasonable doubt without the witness. And since the only reliable source of our client actually committing the crime of arson is the witness, it kind of does depend on how that witness was feeling at that time. For example, we don't even know about any tools that our client may have used to set the fire. Are there any matches to his person? Any gasoline? Any torches? Whatnot? How did our client set the fire exactly? So let's apply this Brady test. First of all, was the evidence that was withheld relevant to the case? Of course it was. It shows that the only source that could identify our client as the culprit was heavily intoxicated at that time, so it's unreliable. And the second question is whether that evidence would have had any impact had it been disclosed. Well, of course it would, because again, it challenges the witness testimony, the witness credibility. So, yes, this is a Brady violation under the standards set in Brady v. Maryland. And that's essentially how prompts like this work. You work out some key takeaways and formulate your opinion based on those takeaways. Now, that's essentially it. Thank you very much for listening. As always, please direct any questions to my direct messages on Discord.